8th of December, 2025, and Ranger decided to join me. He's joined me on many videos. He's usually laying down, but a lot to cover today. And before I get into my operational risk assessment of Mark Joseph CARNEY, I've done two very detailed reports on my assessment of him, just regarding his influence internationally and Canada, and how it's impacted us through various different positions that he's held, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, I unpack that. But before I do, there are so many different events that are happening. And whether you be on the left or the right or libertarian, it seems that, like, again, there's just like people missing key information. And again, everyone's guilty of this. And just like reinforcing their own political bias, like for certain like events that happen. So for example, like it just seems that more and more, like whatever the right rulership or leadership is doing, like there's it's just like 100% support, no questioning Trump, no questioning anything. And then you have the left where it's actually a lot worse. But again, like there's like no questioning their own party or ideologies or anything like that. And it's gotten to a point where unfortunately a woman lost her life yesterday, and she wasn't from. I'm going to get into a lot of information. I want this to be respectful. I have been warning people on the record for years now, saying that the way these protests are escalating and how much more organized and aggressive they've become over the last few years. And again, these are politically motivated, ideologically motivated, psychological operations that people are falling from. And there are organizations where they're getting funding. So I've talked about the Open Society with George Soros. I've given so much information about paid protesters. And if you want more information, go to Nick Shirley's channel, his social media, and he exposes regulars on a literal regular basis. And he's been doing it for a long time. And so take a look at his work. Don't just take my word for it. And more violence. I'm seeing people throwing snowballs. I'm seeing people throw rocks at ICE officials, or even law enforcement that are doing their jobs that's completely unrelated to immigration, and disrupting police work, disrupting law and order. They've, again, attacked law enforcement. They've attacked civilians. If people want to counter protest or even just have like conversations with people, it's turned violent. They expose themselves. Repeatedly, consistently, this happens as well, and it's I'm saying it's getting worse. And there's people coming from other countries that are paid protesters that are organizing within North America, and they are training protesters with different military tactics, law enforcement tactics, counter law enforcement tactics that like for protesters to use, and arming certain groups as well, and becoming way more radicalized with using various social media platforms. So not just Discord and video games where there is a lot of influence, but even mainstream media, especially on the left, respectfully speaking, is getting it's been out of control now for at least 5 years that I've been talking about. And obviously longer than that as well. And so it's this two-tier justice system as well, where the Freedom Convoy, this was a movement that was necessary. And it was hijacked by grassroots people that were actually taking that opportunity to peacefully protest and protesting the dictatorship that was happening, authoritarian rulership. And we had really extreme measures for the pandemic with the mandates and the lockdowns and the forced inoculations, and just what our politicians and the experts they were using, what they were spewing. Again, this was emboldening people to get even more violent. And so I was getting a lot of targeted attacks on myself, online and in person, during COVID and even beyond, because I wasn't vaccinated. I was public about it. I was vocal about it. I was respectful about it. Or there would be times where I wouldn't be wearing my mask. And we already know the studies on the masks, et cetera. And I even shared that at a time where even like the boxes of masks say that it does not prevent the spread, of the virus, this gain of function. I don't know what you want to call it, like mRNA therapeutic that was being forced on people, and people are saying, "Oh, you weren't forced." Okay, no, but you just didn't have, like, you weren't able to be involved in society at all, and you were getting targeted and punished by the majority of people. It's like over 90% of people, just for your own decisions that turned out to be correct. And I would obviously not go to the gym or do things if I was like symptomatic, and that should apply for everyone even now. And again, I'm going on all these rants, but I'm going to get into my social media because again, there's a lot of misinformation that's being spread, or people that are commenting
Why are people showing up in
from a place where they have not been in life or death situations. They have not done crowd control. They've not served, respectfully speaking, and I mean this respectfully, they have not done patrols. They have not been in areas where where there's more risk. And these people have been put through so much more risk. And again, this is largely the fault of being emboldened by people on the left, of media and politicians. So Tim Walz and that clown that he had saying, get the fuck out or whatever. These are all things that are emboldening people that are already radicalized to use more violence and more extreme measures. So it didn't help at all what Tim Walz did or the guy that he had speaking for him. And again, he's just salty because he got exposed for being a clown and for allowing fraud within a state, allowing these protests, emboldening these protests for years, and law enforcement not involving themselves in these protests, nonsensical protests. And I'll reiterate, she wasn't even from that state, which is also tragic, right? And so, like, this is what I mean. If you're going to protest things, I keep on telling people, contact your local leaders, contact your congressmen, contact your mayors, contact your district representative for your member of parliament, your senator, etc. Be respectful, be peaceful, bring facts. And I know we're getting gaslit. I've been saying this for years. I have so many sent emails and calls I've made, and I have records of it all. And we consistently have gotten gaslit, but it doesn't mean that you give up, right? Like there's still the butterfly effect, and there's still the opportunity for, again, a less biased media push. And I've given ways that we can have that. And anyway, and so here's a take from Scott Jennings, and he's on CNN. And this is what he has to say. Unfortunately, this was a reality check for a lot of people that just think that rules and laws don't apply to them, and they can be violent, they can be aggressive, or they can disrupt law enforcement and burn flags, threaten people, all of these things that they've been doing, even shoot at law enforcement or have firearms in their goddamn vehicles prepared to attack ICE agents, etc. They've taken over police precincts and again, and just been allowed to do this. It's been free reign. And respectfully speaking, people have been so much more peaceful and so much more controlled in their responses than any other goddamn country in the world. And so if you're going to protest, I would say to try to make it where honestly it's a protest, respectfully speaking, worth protesting, like an actual dictatorship regime, or anyways, there's so many different movements out there that actually make sense, like the March for Freedom, when parents and others they did a protest in Ottawa. It was regarding parental rights, right? The government was trying to take more and more freedoms and liberties and control from the parents, and making it where the government basically owns your children, and what they're taught in schools went against what a lot of people believed as part of their religion, their culture, or just based on being an actual scientist, or not believing in this, like the 18 different genders, like not being able to just define what a man or a woman is, introducing trans and woke and DEI ideologies into the school systems, bringing into the school systems like how and why to hate white people, and beyond. And so anyways, he probably says this a lot better than me.
But it strikes me that we are undergoing an epidemic of political vigilantism right now. Why are people showing up in vehicles, in convoys, not just in Minneapolis, but all over the country, in an effort to obstruct lawful federal law enforcement activities? This is not an isolated incident. We have had hundreds of car rammings against ICE agents all over the country. According to DHS, this lady in this car today, along with other vehicles, had been tracking ICE agents around. Why are people believing that they can drive their car into a federal law enforcement situation and that is an appropriate thing to do? I understand they don't like the fact that these agents are enforcing existing immigration law, but that's not how we change laws in this country. If you don't like a law, you talk to the politicians. You don't drive your car into the middle of a building or a law enforcement situation that's being occupied by the people who are simply there to enforce the law. If I don't like how much the IRS is charging me in taxes, I don't drive my car into the Treasury Department, try to run somebody over. I call my congressman. Political vigilantism is being encouraged by Democratic officials like the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota, Peggy Flanagan, who earlier this year told people to, quote, put your bodies on the line, and Tim Walz calling these guys Gestapo all year. What do you think happens when you radicalize a base of people about?
Exactly. I've got another one here. Yeah, so how to avoid ICE. And again, I'm being respectful when I say this, because this is something that I said even during the Freedom Convoy. I was saying don't fall for the paid protesters, the crisis actors, the agitators, the instigators, the feds, like the deep state plants. Don't fall for any of that stuff. The role players, again, when I talk about these, there are civilians and are people working with government that are also hired during these major protests. And they're there to elicit emotional responses in people and other things as well. It's steering behavior and movement patterns, etc. And and unless you have like a certain percentage of the population of your country, and I think the rule is like 3.5% or more, involved in a protest, and it needs to be peaceful, then there is honestly no change. Usually that is that happens, and this is internationally. This is just like a rough stat. But so like that's a lot of people. And so the reason why the Freedom Convoy was as successful as it was, because again, this was a Fed, stage friggin' thing as well. Maybe not exactly like the date and time, but again, this was something that they wanted, because they would do the exact same thing that the US does, differently, and usually like a year to 2 years between that time after the fact. And I already knew and was covering what would happen during January 6th, this being a Fedsurrection, which now we're getting vindicated, the people that have been saying this for literally years and being called insane or conspiracy theorist, all of these things, even though I'm an international security analyst, and like you, literally, respectfully speaking, friggin' work at friggin', anyways, not that position or role. And where was I going? And yeah, so getting more grassroots people involved, making sure that people knew it was peaceful, and having conversations with all levels of government to discuss like the plan of action, and giving like daily update briefs, oftentimes even multiple times a day, about what was going on. Again, in order to make this peaceful, in order to make sure that there was no service vehicles being impeded, that major access routes, that they weren't being impeded. And that we were calling out and exposing people, these far left, I'm going to reiterate, these far left radicals, these leftist terrorists that come from all over the world, but like a lot of them came from the US during the Freedom Convoy, and were local. We had a lot of Ottawa locals, again, these friggin' swamp dwellers, respectfully speaking, that were going against people within the Freedom Convoy, and how it was built and discussed on mainstream media. It couldn't have been further from the goddamn truth, from what actually happened during the Freedom Convoy. And I was there, and I also was there before they landed in Ottawa, when they were doing their different stops, etc., in different staging areas, and assessing the situation, providing support, and again, doing my part, but also ensuring that I was peaceful, and that if I saw anything that was suspicious or could potentially lead to being like not peaceful, we have to address this as well. But yeah, like even like Molotov cocktail stuff happens, and cutting brake lines, and damaging windows, and flooding trucks, and threatening people's businesses if they didn't like support like the exploitation of peaceful protesters. And so like, yeah. And so I was also saying that, like, listen to the cops. Even Tamara Leach, and I don't know who was with her. It might have been Chris Babar. I don't know if they were, because I forget, but like I know that they voluntarily, willingly, like obviously turned themselves into law enforcement when they knew that they were, there was essentially like that they were going to get arrested anyways. They found that out, and they were complying with law enforcement throughout too, by the way. And so even then they were very respectful, even when the handcuffs were getting put on, very respectful, and they literally walked to them peacefully, etc. And then were arrested. And so completely different, right? And so also saying that, like, if you see people in gas masks or anything like that, get the hell out of there, and don't try to escalate things or fight back, because again, it's not going to work out in your favor. And again, it should be like higher punishments, respectfully speaking, for people to assault or impede law enforcement. And I'm not saying that I haven't had my own issues with certain law enforcement people within Ottawa because of what I was sharing and who I was connected to, and phones and conversations being listened to, etc. And but there are good ones like Helen Bruce, etc. It's like really hard to trust law enforcement, especially in Ottawa, like for Canadians and RCMP now, because of what's been done to people, even personally, and even people I know that have gotten so fucked over by law enforcement, unfortunately. But people, again, that are bad actors and that they are fully psyops, unfortunately, respectfully speaking, and it's from the top down. So Brenda Lucky, she completely, and not even just her, but she had a large part to do with like destabilizing the RCMP and losing the trust of the people for what she was pushing and what she was supporting, etc. Not to the same degree, obviously, as people within the House of Commons and cabinet, but still, she should have pushed back. CDS should have pushed back on more. And I'm all over the place. Yeah, don't attack ICE officers. Obey federal and state laws. There are concerns with ICE, and I've even shared this before as well, with where they're getting a lot of their training from Israel in certain areas, and it's a largely different tactics that the IDF, by the way, use as opposed to Canadian or American military and our special forces. And I would argue that we are far superior militaries, Canada included. Look at our records, than Israel. And again, I'm biased, but it's just a fact. And obviously, Canada is not a touch on the U.S. I mean, look at that surgical strike they just conducted. That was incredible, and Canada would not come close to being able to do something on that scale. Obviously, for so many different reasons: our population size, our military size, the capabilities that we have, et cetera, et cetera. And we don't have the same like influence internationally for coordinated activities to happen concurrently, et cetera. And so, and where we don't look at protesters as all hostile or at crowd control. It's not like seeing like the crowd as everyone being hostile. You'll see that they are more reactive, and it is more aggressive. But again, they're coming from a different region of the world, and they have done things differently based on what's going on in Israel and Palestine and Iran and neighboring regions. And again, what the IDF has been doing in the last several years has been, there have been war crimes and crimes against humanity, including on children, and there should be concern with those tactics and strategies being employed in our countries. And so there should be more consideration. I've talked about this in other videos, more consideration being provided to veteran law enforcement or military that come from Canada or the US to be involved in ICE operations before, I would say, IDF. And I mean that respectfully, I do. And because again, we look even when entering buildings, like for urban operations, et cetera, like you're looking at non-threats when you're entering and things like that, and trying to mitigate collateral damage, et cetera, et cetera. And then with like varying degrees of like escalations that we use, like ground grill guy, and again, it's also situation dependent as well. If there's an immediate threat to your life or the life of others within your company or platoon or whatever, that is where you have the authority to use up to and including lethal force. And so with ICE agents is they do, based on their rules of engagement, they are authorized to use up to and including lethal force when you look at the use of force model if their life is in immediate threat. And you can make that decision for yourself on what you agree with on that. But I will just show you some video.
Civilian. But was she innocent?
I really like this video, and I follow him.
An ICE officer just killed a civilian. But was she innocent? Many are saying yes, based on this clip.
No! No! Shame! Shame! Oh my fucking God!
Looks like cold-blooded murder, right? Now, before you react, ask yourself, is there something I'm not seeing? Because there's another angle. One mainstream media isn't showing you. Watch. Here it is one more time. Look closely. Her car makes contact with the officer. You can see him jolt backwards. And here's a picture showing a bullet through the front windshield. consistent with the vehicle accelerating forward into the agent's path. Now, let's walk through the facts. Is this woman's death a tragedy? Of course. She's a human being. Are you allowed to interfere with law enforcement and then accelerate away when they confront you? No. Did her car make contact with an officer as she accelerated away? The video appears to show, yeah. Did she intend to hit him? We don't know. But let's be charitable and assume no. If your car contacts an officer while you're fleeing, can that officer use deadly force? Yeah. Can the officer know your intent in that split second? No. He's not watching a slowed down clip on social media. He's reacting in real time to a car that just hit him. If you flee law enforcement and your car makes contact with an officer, you are putting your life at risk. And sadly, she rolled the dice and died. Now, this might surprise you, but this operation wasn't triggered by mass deportations. It was triggered by fraud. Yes, it involved deportations, but it was also about billions of dollars allegedly stolen from programs to help children and families. It was legal enforcement for illegal fraud. But here's the—
So she was protesting because, unfortunately, it comes across as that she supported fraud, including the fraud that was taking money away from taxpayers who worked their asses off for that money. And this was billions of dollars that were scammed, including for actual daycares in operation, children that needed services. For example, they were even using and exploiting autistic daycares, using that as a cover for fraud. And so why would you want to tolerate that, respectfully speaking? And why would you want to risk your life? And I did talk about this on Instagram, and so I'm not going to be redundant because I do want to share those stories. And I am interested in a different perspective. But again, to armchair quarterback this, there's more to the story as well, because even several months earlier, he was apparently dragged for a little while by a protester and using a vehicle. And again, that's not to say that there was post-traumatic stress there that made him react more aggressively, etc. I'm just giving you guys context with that was also a potentially life-endangering situation, dragging someone with your goddamn vehicle. I just don't understand what people are thinking. I really don't. And this is where people need a reality check. This bubble that people are living in, and not even looking into what they're protesting or why they believe what they believe. These are all just speaking points, and not actually even traveling to countries to see what's actually going on, or conversating with people from certain countries to see what's actually going on. It's just wild. It's just wild.
The thing, it doesn't matter what they were there for. If you don't like what law enforcement is doing, you have options. Protest, vote, sue, run for office, change the law. But when you decide to take the law into your own hands, when you block officers and then speed off in a 2-ton vehicle while they're standing right next to it, you're not creating change. You're creating chaos.
Exactly.
And chaos has consequences. Clarity takes work. If you value it, become a paid subscriber on Substack.
That was so good. So Clear Thinker, I highly recommend taking a look at his work. And so according to witnesses, Renee Nicole Good was shot from attempting to run over an ICE officer. I don't know if that was a fact. Saying that she was attempting to run, I legitimately think that she was just trying to, again, U-turn and flee, get out of the area. But at that point, it's already too late. She was already, and you're going to get this here, she's going to explain this, but she was very highly involved in this this blockade, okay, essentially. And I'm just going to let her talk. And so by not being respectfully speaking, by being emotional and not paying attention as she was doing the U-turn, trying to flee, which she shouldn't have been doing. She was not listening to law enforcement. This is what I mean. People have so much entitlement and privilege, and they don't think that laws apply to them. Little rabbits in a jungle, right? I think that lions won't get them. You know what I mean? It's just complete and utter false version of realities. And and this is what happens. And I'm going to give other examples of how people have got shot and killed, unfortunately, needlessly, because of being perceived as a threat, not being a threat, but being perceived as a threat. And when you look at their movements and the objects that they're trying to go for, etc., then you'll understand, you know what I mean? The thought process of law enforcement or military and why they responded the way they did.
I woke up to some commotion. I heard some whistles going on out front, so I came downstairs to see what was going on. Wasn't even dressed, and there was a car, the Honda Pilot that's crashed over there now. There was a car blocking the 2 lanes of Portland traffic, and the ICE agents got out and they were saying, "Get out of here, get out of here!" And she was what looked like trying to turn around, and the ICE agent was in front of her car, and he pulled out a gun and put it right in, like, his midriff was on her bumper, and he reached across the hood of the car and shot her in the face. It's like 3-4 times. And then she must have just stepped on the gas. She stepped on the gas immediately, maybe got like 100 feet or so, and ran into the telephone pole and some cars, and then was slumped over in her car. And you could see she was.
I'm gonna say again, like, for me, I'm just looking at observations, and so I'm looking at, there was multiple shots fired. We all know that. We saw the footage. Unfortunately, and again, this is traumatic and it's tragic, and it could have been avoided. But you look at, like, there was multiple shots fired. 2 to 3 shots are saying. There's one shot that I could see that's through the windshield, and it's at the corner. So that is leading me to believe that obviously the remaining shots would have been the driver's side window, and that's likely why it's down. It was either completely broken, or if there was any glass remaining, they likely could have possibly, like, either broke it out, or I can't see, like, the full window driver's side. But, and so again, everyone has to look at everything. And
she was probably gone, and there was a medic. There was a neighbor who's a physician who was yelling, "Can I please check the pulse?" There was no first responders. There were 0 first responders. They left her in her car, slumped over for about 10-15 minutes, blocking us all. And eventually EMS got here, and they wouldn't.
And again, armchair quarterbacking, like if people are, like, need medical help, especially if they're bleeding out, like, you need immediate attention. And this is where, like, this is gonna have to be, like, an open discussion on where there are multiple things that come to my mind, where, like, why would you not allow someone who's a doctor to perform medical aid on someone that is clearly, like, possibly dying? Because again, it wasn't confirmed yet. He didn't have visual on the body. It could be for so many different reasons. Is this person actually a verified doctor? Can they prove that, right? And so can this person possibly cause more harm than good? Was this person involved in the protests? And so is there possibility of this person doing something to possibly damage evidence that would, I don't know, make things worse for them? There's so many different factors to look at. And then having that continuity of having, like, we're known when 911 is called, obviously known medical teams, paramedics respond. And even that, I believe there was actually, no, it's not even that. I believe I think that they say what they did. They didn't even bring the ambulance up, I think, because they were obstructed, because it became a crime scene, not a crime scene, but a scene. And so people had to go in with and just take her out. And I guess they dragged her for a certain period of time before she was brought to the hospital. But again, I don't want to say things that are just alleged. And so don't just take my word for it. I may or may not have, like, a video on this from another witness that described it, but I'll let them talk.
Let the bus in, so it was just the EMS workers, and they checked her out for a second, maybe five minutes or so, and then carried her out, no stretcher or anything, carried her out like a sack of fucking potatoes.
Can you describe a little bit about what this woman looked like? Was there anyone else in the car with her? Did you know if she was the target?
I don't know if she was a target. They clearly wanted her out of there because she was the main car leading the protest, is my understanding. I talked to another guy who was driving behind her, but she was very successful in blocking traffic. She was doing what she was set out to do, and so they wanted to get her the hell out of there. Yeah.
So it looked like she was impeding ICE vehicles.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
That was her goal.
Do you have a read on her demographic?
The left, oh, freedom convoy, they're impeding service vehicles, blah blah blah, which they weren't. And then the left, when their side actually impedes law enforcement vehicles, it's anyway.
I think she was a white woman. Looked like I didn't see her when she was alive. Just slumped over in the car. It looked like she had dyed short curly hair. I have a video of her in the car. But yeah, no
curly hair.
No other description.
I don't have a current photo of her, but oh yeah, this is Canada too. Oh my
red
goodness.
light, and give me a message.
So let's see if there's anything else before I get into Mario's, because it's completely unrelated. Okay, so breaking the plates of the vehicle that nearly ran over an ICE agent were registered in Missouri. It would appear that activists are likely traveling to Minnesota to protest ICE's presence. And why? I'm respectfully speaking, why? Okay, before you know what, I'm gonna go take this video first,
and give me a sec because you're gonna.
And then I'm gonna go on Instagram and talk more about that. So
to see where I'm going with this. I want you all to meet Adriana. She was the victim in 2024. This wasn't published anywhere in the news yet, and so I asked the gentleman, is there any sort of links, give me a case number, anything. Send me pictures of her and I'll cover the story, because you'll see why. This was the headline a year ago. The OPP charged a Bolton driver following September fatality. Now, this isn't the full story. Here's the full story. This was an asylum seeker. And guess what his sentence was? 55 days. Take a guess why? It was under the 60-day mark, so he wouldn't be deported. And you know that red light that he ran? He ran it 10 seconds after. 10 seconds after it turned red. That's what the cost of life is with the criminal justice system. And I'm using justice in air quotes. 55 days. That's what Adriana's life is worth. 55 days.
all right, on to Instagram. That's my dogs. We're gonna go out again for a walk in the wilderness after this video.
The cocaine networks in Venezuela.
Okay, so he started with the cocaine networks in Venezuela. He's got to look at everything.
Venezuela were set up by the CIA, not by Maduro. The fact is you can simply watch the 1993 60 Minutes episode where Mike Wallace broke that the CIA had set up an anti-cocaine warehouse in Venezuela and then struck a secret agreement with the Venezuelan National Guard to traffic 1,500 tons of cocaine into Miami against the protestations of DEA. That was all sold on the streets of Miami to support CIA black operations, paramilitary groups. The opposition, backed by the U.S. inside of Venezuela in 2019, is deeply affiliated with these CIA cocaine networks. There are probably international crimes that Maduro committed, but the idea of charging him with running a cocaine conspiracy, which Venezuela inherited from the Central Intelligence Agency itself, has made this case very tenuous. I'm concerned that this case could get dismissed because there's going to be so much last-minute craziness going on inside the DOJ, as the CIA is going to be constantly leaning on the DOJ to try to limit discovery. The cocaine network.
And so it's not just about drugs, and it's definitely not just about drugs regarding Maduro in Venezuela. And I've done like reports on that, and other key players that are involved, and the who, what, when, where, why, and how, based on my own observations. And I've come to the same conclusions. And so unfortunately, he is guilty of so many other crimes. And so I don't know or understand why they're just focusing on that aspect of it. when, again, there is a hypocrisy in that. I will agree. Like, there are people within I've talked about Iran-Contra. I've talked about the CIA's involvement and government involvement in multiple different, drug operations all over the world, including China and Vietnam and Afghanistan, et cetera, et cetera. And like even funding wars that benefit the military, pharmaceutical, industrial tech complex at the expense of us. And not only on the battlefield and things like that, but also through like drug overdoses and things like that, and the supply routes. And so I'll talk about supply routes and why he's right. It should not just be about that. But is Maduro a criminal? Absolutely. Is he a dictator? Absolutely. Has he killed people and had people killed and imprisoned, including even the president that was democratically elected? I forget what his name is right now. But even apparently his daughter's husband was a political prisoner for like over a year. And this is coming from someone that went to school with him. And is saying that, and so much more corruption. Again, even with like oil and you name it, working with terrorist organizations in the Middle East, and that needed to be unfucked because they are close to the U.S. and it does impact Canada as well, and our hemisphere, and it just seems like all these hearings and these court cases and people that were supposed to go to jail for all this corruption, people that are actual and literal traitors to their countries, are getting away with it. And it's people are fatigued.
The cocaine network.
Tim Walz, jail. He literally corrupt. And especially now with this response to what happened yesterday. And like he wants blue on blue. He wants to use the National Guard and law enforcement to go against ICE. Are you crazy? And then emboldening people to come from all over the place in order to go against. Like, this is what I mean. Like, are you crazy?
You know what? I guess I will be that asshole. Y'all can go ahead and unclutch those pearls because you are not the victims and you are definitely not innocent in this. For months, y'all have been out here objectifying, brutalizing, and degrading these ICE agents. You've been calling them Nazis. You've been calling them animals. You've been calling them murderers. Y'all are the ones that have been out here saying that these people need to lose their lives, that violence against them is justified. You didn't discourage it. You didn't try to walk it back. You amplified it. Y'all have been the ones out here indoctrinating all these people, telling them that these men don't deserve to breathe. So y'all don't get to sit there and act surprised when chaos actually shows up. When a woman uses her vehicle as a weapon, and then a man reacts.
And there are people saying, and people that I respect too, by the way, but they're saying that she was unarmed. That woman was the lead vehicle in blocking ICE agents during their convoy. 1 second. She was repeatedly asked to leave. She moved, blocked another area, as you can see, and this is where she almost drove over a law enforcement officer. There's new video footage that has come out. It's very clear. And even the angle of his shot, it's very clear that she was going to hit him, and he had to move out of the way. And I do believe that he did get clipped, his feet or something like that. And by the way, this law enforcement officer, several months ago, another goddamn protest, again, violent protests. Anyway, he was dragged by a vehicle. Okay, several months earlier. So, and anyways, she was not unarmed. And she did escalate things repeatedly. She was asked repeatedly to get out of the vehicle, et cetera, and she was not complying. And then she used her vehicle as a weapon after blocking ICE agents. What the hell did you expect, guys?
Acts out of fear that you created, because for months, all he's heard is people like him should be hunted down and killed. Now all of y'all are out here acting like, oh my God, how could have this happened? Hear me clearly when I say this. Fuck you. Just didn't fall out of the sky. This just didn't come out of nowhere. This is what cause and effect looks like. You don't get to sit out here and scream death to them for months, then cry victim when somebody believes you. You don't get to sit here and weaponize laws, excuse violence, and reward extremists, and wash your hands when reality punches back. Y'all have been the ones out here teaching these people that violence is acceptable. You've been the ones that normalize it. You've been the ones that have been cheering it on. And now that it's ugly, now that it's undeniable, you want sympathy? Hell no. You don't.
Well, you get sympathy from me. It is tragic.
Working on this issue for years. You've spoken to the whistleblowers personally. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You have an understanding that what
A lot of
working on
I further clarified after that. A lot of people are armchair quarterbacking what happened yesterday in Minnesota, and it was absolutely a tragic event and one that could have absolutely been avoided. And these are things that people have been warning the left and the Red-Green Alliance now for literally years. You've gotten too emboldened. You've become too violent. There's been so much damage done to property, to infrastructure, to businesses, attacking law enforcement officers, attacking ICE officers, you name it. And this has been ongoing now for years now. And again, it keeps on escalating. And there are times when there are immediate actions that need to be taken, especially if it's presented as a clear and immediate danger to one's life, for law enforcement to react to certain situations. This law enforcement officer was in front of the vehicle. This is going to end in a second here, so one second. People do use vehicles as weapons. We've seen this before in other protests where there have been obviously vehicles used to drive over individuals, and that's also unacceptable. There are also times where people are doing things that go against what law enforcement are telling them to do, right? They're telling them not to resist arrest. They're telling them to put their hands up. They're telling them to do this. They're telling them to do that. And they're not listening. And multiple law enforcement officers repeatedly asked this woman to get out of the vehicle. She was going to get arrested or talked to or whatever. And again, I'm going to reiterate, she was involved in the protest. She was the lead vehicle blocking ICE agents from getting illegal immigrants that are committing crimes, drug crimes, human trafficking, etc. Why don't you guys want that? People to remove those people. But anyways, and so when you respond a certain way, you don't listen to law enforcement, that might end up where you lose your life, unfortunately. I'm going to continue. Even with the Freedom Convoy, and I have stories and videos that I've saved to prove this. I said this has to be peaceful. If law enforcement or anyone is telling you to leave areas, then you leave. And we made it very clear that we're not going to block any service vehicles in the downtown core, despite the fact that there were so many people there. We managed to make this peaceful. Again, these tactics on the left of using their vehicles as weapons, as using actual weapons, like this needs to stop. Okay, you guys have been emboldened just like little children to do whatever the hell you want and have these hissy fits, and you guys have been violent. And again, there's billions of dollars of damage in the US because of these protests. And these are organized, staged, and planned, and people are paid. Okay, so people that are following this and you're not getting paid, you are a moron, right? Like get on that money train, right? Like you're doing things for free that are literally psyopsing you and others. But anyway, if you put your hands in your pockets, if you put your hands in your jacket, if you put your hands in your purse when law enforcement's telling you to put your hands up, you might get. So when you do things that can appear to be a threat, an immediate threat, you cannot be surprised when law enforcement uses lethal force. And it's unfortunate, I will reiterate that, but she had no business being there to begin with. Again, even these protests that they're doing, they're being psyops and convinced that a dictator should be freed and released, and that we, like, keep your hands off Venezuela, not understanding the whole friggin' story that has to do with that as well. And there's a lot strategically, like security-wise, financially, Monroe Doctrine stuff in there as well, preventing other superpowers from gaining access to the industry in order to, again, like indirectly impact their like finances, like China and Iran, et cetera, all over the place with these tangents. But that's my take.
What are you, a racist? No, there is no big secret plan to replace white men in all aspects of American life.
I just wanted to see, like, there might be, I hope I was clear on that. Like, I know I'm being redundant, and yeah, I'm obviously saying, like if you want to protest, it's still legal, but you have to do things in a legal way. Once you do things that are illegal, that is where, again, where shit hits the fan, so to speak. and things that may not be a threat can be perceived as a threat. And I gave the example of like going in your pockets or going in your purse or whatever, when law enforcement is telling you to put your hands up or behind your back or whatever, and you're not listening. There's the possibility that you're going to get a weapon to use against them, because it's possibly happened before, and it's definitely happened. It happens on a regular basis, and like maybe not at the individual level, depending on where you are doing your law enforcement. But anyways, not an easy job. It is a necessary job, and again, we need a military, we need law enforcement, we need these services. They need to be properly trained, properly educated, and all of those things.
What are you?
But yeah, there's more I wanted to say, but anyway.
You're a racist? No, there is no big secret plan to replace white men in all aspects of American life.
A few moments later.
Yesterday, Compact Magazine published a piece of journalism that I believe history will record as the last obituary for the American meritocracy. It's titled The Lost Generation by Jacob Savage. It confirms with cold, hard, irrefutable data that from 2014 to 2024, the American elite conducted a silent, systemic, and illegal purge of white men from the professional class. And this wasn't an accident. It wasn't market forces. It was a coordinated deletion. But the Compact article is just the tip of the iceberg here, because I dug into these numbers last night, and what I found actually scared the shit out of me. So we're going to go sector by sector from the boardroom to the operating room, and I'm going to show you some of the receipts here. So let's start with the money. In 2021, corporate America panicked. The riots happened. Remember this, the HR departments got scared, and Black Lives Matter, they got a decision, mostly peaceful. Bloomberg Law analyzed the hiring data for the S&P 100, which is the biggest, most powerful companies in America. In the year after the 2020 protests, these companies added over 300,000 new jobs. Guess how many of those jobs went to white applicants? 6%. 94% of all new corporate jobs in the S&P 100 went to people of color. In a country that is still majority white, it is statistically impossible to achieve that number without massive, widespread, and illegal discrimination.
You realize that nothing's going to change until the people who want change are more concerned about achieving change than they are the names they'll be called for wanting change.
You're watching the Kramer Says Project.
And we see it more and more. I've given examples where it's happening consistently in Canada. I can't speak as much with the U.S., but there are examples of people that are even being chiefs of police. Like fire chiefs that don't even have like firefighter experience and things like that. Like these are all like red flags. But in Canada, we had Brenda Lucki, that was the head of the RCMP during the pandemic. And her focus was not on the right things, and she was wrong about a lot of things. And there were many men that were overlooked for that position that had way more experience than her, way more experience, and they were overlooked because they were white men. And I've given examples of chief of police in I think it was Sault Ste. Marie, or one of those areas, but anyways, in Ontario, where the same thing, like a female was 10 years less service than the guy that should have been considered for the chief of police, and he was overlooked for her, and she didn't even serve in in certain tactical teams, didn't have like the same experiences at all in certain areas that he had experience in, and she had 10 years less service. And we even see that with cabinet picks in the House of Commons, and where it's not merit-based at all. And a lot of government jobs, and I've shared this, that are being posted, freely posted. And this is literal discrimination and racism, basically, essentially saying, if you are a white man or even a white woman, if you're straight male, white male, or a straight white female, but more like white, like a straight white male, like don't even bother applying, because it's literally pushing DEI hiring and other groups that again are that it's not the majority of the people within Canada. And so we've been largely discriminating against and oppressing not only people that built this country and have served and protected and defended this country, and we had great lives, again, not perfect, but like for many decades before, again, 2015. And yeah.
What are you, a racist?
Okay, so I got a comment here. So I wish I could kill the people that made my life dangerous and shitty at my job. I'm not exactly clear on the comment, but I'm assuming you're being ironic. That made my life dangerous and shitty at my job. And so, like, I don't think there's proof of him being shitty at his job. But I mean, like law enforcement, ICE agents, military, etc. Like their lives are more on the line than people that work, for example, at Tim Hortons or McDonald's or a desk job, etc. And so, yeah, I can understand. Okay, so yeah, it was ironic. Okay, so I understand. Like there are a lot of people, and again, I'm I really hate cops now. And I'm not saying I don't understand why, but because of so many examples, and I've even said like I have been harassed and fucking targeted by law enforcement, and again, even trying to file, I filed a third party complaint, and because I know it was what I was sharing online about COVID and things like that in 2021. And yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. And I got 2 separate visits late at night, by the way, on a Sunday night and a Monday night while I'm in goddamn bed with multiple SUVs with like lights going off and multiple freaking men with firearms. And I'm like, I'm in suburbia. And I'm like, I've never had issues with law enforcement in my fucking life. Worked with them on so many different levels, including military service and beyond. And so, and I had no idea what they were talking about. Oh, and I'm like, here's my phone, here's whatever you guys want to look at, like sent messages, sent emails, blocked, and I literally, anyways, and so luckily, but that was a lot. And I have so many other examples as well that are even worse than that, by the way. And if I didn't know people like Helen Bruce and others that I've worked with in the past, that I've done like even other contracts with to work with government to try to train people properly, like you're talking about, because a lot of law enforcement officers are not trained properly either, at least in Canada. Depending on what area you're from, like there's not a lot of focus on training. And I'll say even within like the higher level government organizations like CSIS and Global Affairs Canada, etc., they're not doing the training that they need to be doing. And I know that for a fact because I was the trainer for the Standing Rapid Deployment Team courses in Ottawa, where people came from all over the world to come here to do the training. And this is something that Global Affairs, they should be doing every year or 2 years, mandatory training. And I don't know if they're using another company or not that I'm not aware of, or the fact that they're likely not training or doing these courses anymore, or it's not at the same scale. I know for a fact it's not at the same scale. And so, yeah. And so we're getting shittier training, less training, and they're talking about this being like a money thing. And so we're investing our money in woke DEI stuff, panels and committees, and travel to places that we have no, like, and spending so much money on travel. I'm talking about House of Commons and cabinet and people within these, like, anyways, those positions, and it's taking away from actual people that need this training to do their job correctly. And I know people like Chris Mandiga, oh my goodness, Chris Mandigma from Pakiti Tursa. And he's someone that is former law enforcement, served many years, and he does use of force instruction. But this guy is like a Jedi Knight, and he trains with law enforcement and military, and he has for years. High level stuff like CQB stuff, urban ops stuff, use of force stuff, like I'm talking about. There's even AI utilized as well with, anyways, with others, and so, and he does great training. And so, but these are more like the TAC teams and like the higher level, like those guys that are getting this degree of training. But I've done advanced firearms instruction for peace officers and law enforcement, and I will tell you that they do not use their firearms as much as they should be. And yeah. And so even training on their firearms, like they're not regularly going out on the ranges, and you can ask lots of law enforcement people and they're not doing that training either. And the focus is more on like, how do you describe, like a subject or a person, not to be offensive and to be inclusive, instead of actually, focusing on taking down the perp. I hope that makes sense. And so the only way that, yeah, the only way, but no, things definitely need to be overhauled. So like, I'm not going to say, oh, you have no reason to hate the cops. Like they give examples every single goddamn day as to why. Right. And their hands are also tied. So even when they do detain people, arrest people, and it's clear that these people are guilty and criminals and scumbags that should be in jail for years, it's not them that are the ones that are putting that, like allowing them to be out on bail. Like it has nothing to do with the cops that do the work on the ground. These are lawyers and judges that are leftist radical morons, especially in Ottawa, the bigger friggin' threat. And they're, oh, I'm going to give you 55 days for fucking killing someone. And because we don't want you to be deported, and giving people lenient sentences for, again, for like rape and murder and B&Es and organized crime, like people that are not even Canadian. And yeah, but the heavy hand of the law, if you post a negative tweet. Anyways, I'm on all these tangents. I shared that. Okay.
Thank you. Because they're...
See this, it's good to hear law enforcement officers call things out. More of that needs to happen, because this is how you gain trust. Like if law enforcement, if you know that what your government is trying to tell you to do is unlawful or a grift, etc., and or there's like no real plan, no real strategy, etc., call it out. That's part of your job. So she was doing her job here.
Thank you. Because there is no plan.
So she's saying there's no plan. So police admit NDP have no safety plan for drug consumption site in Winnipeg. You need a plan, guys.
Is for Inspector Peters. In your opinion, as law enforcement, do you actually think this consumption site is going to make this area safer? Your personal opinion.
That's a tough one. Oh, that's a good one.
I don't know. Thank you. Because there is no plan. There is just an application to have sex. Thank you. Because there...
Yeah, so they and actually she should be making a plan in conjunction with the government leadership. And
Thank you.
before you do that, am I wrong in this? This just makes sense. Like have a plan. Anyway. Okay. So I wrote this, obviously with the help of AI and other people that I was talking to within my network, and just to get it into like a more condensed version and then like pretty up a little bit. And so this is, so here's a verified operational summary of the Bella 1 Marinera incident based on multiple current news reports and credible sources as of yesterday. And so identity and mission. The vessel, originally known as Bella 1, was a sanctioned tanker tied to the so-called Shadow Fleet used to evade U.S. sanctions related to Venezuelan and Iranian oil exports. Reflagging re-identification attempt. While being pursued by U.S. Coast Guards and military assets, after refusing to allow an attempted boarding in December 2025, the ship's crew changed its identity to Marinera, and adopted a Russian flag and registration mid-voyage. Russia issued formal diplomatic notes asserting the vessel was now under Russian jurisdiction and argued that a boarding would violate international law. Pursuit and interception. The U.S. tracked the tanker after it sailed from near Venezuela northward into the North Atlantic, south of Iceland, EU waters. So I believe possibly that, again, that this submarine was following just to ensure the safety of the ship in case it got a little messy. Anyway, this is crazy. Not crazy, but all by design. So the U.S. seized the Marinera on January 7th, 2026, setting a U.S. federal court warrant for sanctions violations. Russian naval presence. Multiple reports confirm the Russian naval assets, including a submarine, were deployed in the area to monitor or escort the tanker during the transatlantic flight. Outcome and response. The U.S. successfully boarded and took control of the Russian-flagged Marinera despite the attempted reflagging and the presence of Russian naval forces. Like they were literally painting the Russian flag on the ship. Anyways, Russia condemned the seizure, calling it illegal and piracy, and demanded the crew's return. The UK reportedly supported the U.S. operation with surveillance and logistical assistance. It's very interesting to me. The UK, who's also involved in the international drug trafficking ring at the higher level government level, and probably the longest involvement and creation, even the Opium Wars, in the 19th century. Like, anyway, so that's very interesting to me. Legal and strategic implications verified. So what is actually established in the reporting, the U.S. acted under a U.S. federal court warrant related to sanctions enforcement. U.S. officials argued that a mid-journey flag change does not nullify an existing legal authority to seize a vessel tied to continued sanctions evasion. Russia invoked the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, asserting that force should not be used against a lawfully registered vessel in international waters. I mean, the question is it lawfully registered? A legal dispute now central to diplomatic contention. What is not fully established or remains unverified is in reporting that the ship was actively carrying oil at the time of seizure. Several reports suggest it may have been empty. Any direct use of force by Russia against U.S. units, no shots were fired, and the situation did not escalate into broader combat. Okay, so these are the things that are confirmed. So reflagging occurred and was formalized by Russia. The U.S. seized the tanker under a sanctions enforcement warrant despite the Russian flag. A Russian submarine naval presence was reported in the vicinity. Now, Russia has reacted strongly, contesting the legal basis for the boarding. This constitutes a significant escalation in maritime sanctions enforcement, with potential ramifications for maritime law, U.S.-Russian relations, and enforcement of sanctions regimes. Again, the U.S. does this as well, so does the U.K. And so it's just interesting. Does this benefit the U.S. and Canada more than China and Russia? Oh, sorry, China and Iran. Definitely yes, to China and Iran. They did get a lot of their oil from Venezuela. I think it was upwards of like 70% of the oil that they're receiving. Iran and China will be impacted. I'm not sure. Again, I've only seen a few reports on that. I still have to dig. And where was I going with that? I still say, like, and I know this sounds crazy, but like Canada, we're becoming more and more of a security threat, which I'll talk about in my assessment. And we need to be more strongly aligned with the U.S. and less involved with the EU. I think there is a separation that's happening, and the EU again wants to, like, they're confirming troops, soldiers on the ground in Ukraine now, committing to that. So again, more, and again, who's going to be enrolling and volunteering in the friggin' military? Hopefully, no draft, but in these European countries that are again committing their troops to die in Ukraine against Russia. This is, again, it's ridiculous that we're doing that. Both regimes are corrupt, so Russia and Ukraine, and they have been for many years. And like I see more benefits at this point in aligning with Russia and having Russia be, an ally, and then having them as an ally, and then making it where they don't have to rely on China and Iran, et cetera, for support, right? And because they've been asking to be a part of NATO for many years at different times, and that's been rejected even under Obama, et cetera. And I will say that Russia, at least ideologically and culturally, et cetera, being a Christian nation, et cetera, are more aligned with Western values than many other countries where we're accepting even like radical terrorists within our country. And to our demise. All right, now into, I'm going to ask for people's opinions. I landed on two different versions of the assessment that I wanted to post online, so people are going to actually get it here first. All three of you. No, just kidding. There's actually more today, but you'll see it before I post it. And I'm just curious. People don't have to say anything if they don't want to. But what version you like better? So this is the first one: intelligent assessment, strategic risk profile. So subject: Mark Joseph Carney. Focus: operational alignment, policy impact, sovereignty risk. Classification: opposition research. I'm being fair, right? Like, and so I do have a bias, and then critical analysis. So I am being critical. So I'm not being biased in what I'm sharing here, but as at the individual level, like, I'm not going to lie, there's bias there. But anyway, executive summary. This assessment evaluates the subjects, which is Carney. Anyway, his operational history through the lens of regulatory capture, capital concentration, and post-national governance alignment. The analysis indicates that while the subject presents publicly as a neutral public servant and economic stabilizer, His career trajectory and policy record demonstrate functional alignment with large-scale financial institutions at the expense of national economic sovereignty, middle-class stability, democratic accountability, independent domestic enterprise, and there's more, but these are the main ones I'm focusing on because I've talked about these in earlier videos as well. The risk profile does not rely on allegations of personal criminality. Instead, it identifies a systemic pattern in which policy decisions, regulatory frameworks, and crisis narratives consistently advantage too big to fail financial actors while destabilizing or displacing smaller firms, households, and nationally rooted industries. The cumulative effect is institutionalized extraction, public risk absorption paired with private yield retention, right? And that means that we're getting poorer, the rich are getting richer. Operational profile, the transnational financial operator. Carney is best understood not as a conventional politician, but as a financial systems operator whose influences spans central banking, so the Bank of Canada, Bank of England as examples, financial coordination bodies like the World Economic Forum and others, climate and transition financial architecture like GFANZ, green energy, just giving a few examples, there's so many. Private asset management, including people within his family that are involved with Brookfield, Goldman Sachs, and other rich companies that influence the world policies, and Bilderberg multiple times, World Economic Forum multiple times. Public advisory roles during crisis periods, so World Health Organization, EU. So this positioning enables policy continuity across public and private domains, reducing friction between regulation and capital deployment. So it just makes it easy. Rolls out the carpet. And then he's at the end of the carpet receiving, anyway, the rewards. Regulatory capture and the revolving door model. Observed pattern. So Carney exhibits a recurring cycle. Occupies senior regulatory or monetary authority. Advances frameworks that redefine risk, compliance costs, and depress valuations in targeted sectors, for example, energy industry infrastructure. Exits public office into private financial roles positioned to benefit from the resulting market dislocations. Assessment. This pattern constitutes regulatory capture in effect. Regardless of formal legality, public policy functions as a market-shaping instrument, creating downstream consolidation and acquisition opportunities for large financial actors. The risk is not isolated misconduct, but structural conflict of interest embedded in governance design. Economic sovereignty and middle-class erosion. Domestic impact indicators. During and following periods of Carney's influence, Canada experienced accelerated housing and asset inflation, rising household debt dependency, declining real wage purchasing power, small and medium enterprise attrition, increased emigration of skilled workers and capital, and there's even more. And so monetary and regulatory policy favored asset appreciation and financial liquidity over productive investment and affordability, disproportionately benefiting asset holders and financial intermediaries. Assessment. The subject's policy orientation prioritized system stability and capital preservation over middle-class resilience, producing delayed but severe social and economic consequences. So again, this is obviously impacting not just the middle class, but obviously like the lower middle class, people that are, already struggling, Canadian record-breaking food bank attendance. Climate, carbon policy, and capital restructuring. Operational effect. Climate and transition policies advanced or endorsed by the subject, by Carney, repriced energy and industrial assets downwards, increased capital costs for domestic producers, shifted ownership towards large asset managers able to absorb regulatory friction that organization. That's how they spin it. So this represents institutional corruption embedded into rulemaking. Overall risk matrix for the risk level: economic sovereignty, risk level severe; middle class severity, the risk level under him is severe. Again, not under him, sorry, under these policies and measures and things like that. Regulatory capture, high; financialization, high; civil liberties, high; capital flight and emigration, high; transparency and accountability, high; allied strategic alignment, it's saying moderate high. I'm saying it is severe, especially with the US. And with China, anyway, criminal exposure, unproven, because no one's looking into it. That should be looking into it. Anyway, final analytical judgment. The subject's impact is structural, cumulative, and enduring. He does not rely on illegal acts. Yes, he does. This is where AI sometimes, like, I don't know what one to go with because I don't want to get sued. Because even though it seems very obvious based on patterning and things like that, like there are backdoor deals that are being done. It's obvious. And so is that illegal? Is that not illegal? Well, it depends on who you talk to. So he reshapes systems so that illegal acts can be legal, I guess. But public decline becomes monetizable. Risk is socialized. Control migrates away from citizens. Accountability is diffused across institutions. No accountability. So under this model, Canada trends towards an asset pool administered through financial mechanisms rather than a sovereign nation governed by its citizens. Oh, I guess I read the whole thing. Okay, so that was the second version. Maybe the first version was better. We'll see. Or did I only copy one? Wait a minute here. Do I have the right one up? Okay, I might have not been showing you. Anyways, it doesn't matter because that was just one of the versions. And that was one of the ones that I didn't like. Oh, fuck, am I muted? No. Okay, it doesn't show that I'm muted. But my screen's black. I'm going to refresh. I don't know how long I was muted for. I actually wasn't muted on my screen. My screen just went black, which sometimes happens. And I'm just going to switch my VPN here. I might have shown you like an older version of my CARNEY assessment that I didn't like too much because, again, it's too almost naive of an assessment. And but I try to stick again with facts and proof. I'm getting so many pop-ups coming. All right. Okay, now documents are not coming up. Okay. Okay, so this was from 2 nights ago. So intelligence dossier, the CARNEY nexus and global asset extraction. Actually, before I even get into this, I don't even know if people are still watching or can even hear me. But no live chats yet. They got scrubbed. It's just, that's fine anyway, because I'm still rolling. So, okay, so the public risk private profit doctrine. So this was the subject: analysis of Mark Carney, the Goldman Network, and sovereign exploitation. It seemed a little bit too dramatic. Again, I'm trying to like have a balance here so that people on the left and right can read this without, being turned away because of words. So this dossier synthesizes the operational history, financial networks, and geopolitical maneuvering of Mark Carney, his immediate family, specifically Brian Carney, and his alumni network stemming from Goldman Sachs. So I'm not even talking about Brookfield or other things here. It's just the analysis suggests a consistent pattern of behavior spanning 3 decades, the use of public office, central banks, UN envoys to create regulatory frameworks that depress the value of sovereign assets, allowing private capital, Brookfield, Goldman Sachs, family offices to acquire them at distressed prices. This mechanism is currently active in Venezuela via sanctions and debt restructuring, China via green energy infrastructure, and Canada via carbon transition policies. The network operates under the guise of stability, climate action, and aid, but the functional result is the transfer of wealth from national populations to transnational asset managers. The operator, Mark Carney, the control tower. So he does not operate as a mere economist. He operates as an architect of international capital flows. His career trajectory reveals a strategy of moving between the trading desk and the regulator's chair to rig the game before playing it. The Goldman era, 1990 to 2003, Carney cut his teeth in the London and Tokyo offices of Goldman Sachs. So yeah, London and Tokyo. Before he was even in, like, again, working with the banks and stuff like that. So specifically, it's in sovereign risk and emerging markets. This is where the playbook was learned how to profit from the collapse of nations. Example, the Russian bond crisis, 1998. The regulator, 2008, 2020. As governor of the Bank of Canada and then the Bank of England, Carney did not just set interest rates, he weaponized central banking. I mean, that's a little dramatic to say weaponized central banking, but he definitely impacted it. He introduced climate risk into banking stress tests. He did do that. So the mechanism, by declaring oil and gas assets risky or stranded, he effectively cut off capital to these industries, lowering their stock price and making them vulnerable to takeover by private equity firms who are less regulated. The privateer era, 2020 to present. Upon leaving public office, he immediately joined Brookfield Asset Management, a $900 billion plus behemoth, over $1 trillion, and money laundering with that, and offshore bank accounts, and yada yada yada, and so anyway, his job was to lead transition investing, essentially buying the very energy assets his previous policies had devalued, greening them, and selling them back to the public at a premium. Target: Venezuela, the strangulation and the prize. The hostility between the Venezuelan regime and Carney is personal. I don't know about that. Again, sometimes when AI helps, it like sensationalizes this too much. So personal, financial, and strategic. It is a textbook case of financial warfare. The gold heist, 2018-2019. As governor of the Bank of England, Carney was the single decision maker who froze 31 tons of Venezuelan gold, 1.8 billion. The official narrative: compliance with anti-money laundering, AML laws, and uncertainty over who was the legitimate president. Maduro versus Guaido. And so I actually do agree with, and I've said this before, with sanctioning certain countries. But again, there's other things that you can also do. Sometimes it does work. Oftentimes it doesn't work. So there are other things to consider, again, when you're conducting sanctions on countries. And sometimes it's really not benefiting you, or obviously it definitely doesn't benefit the citizens of these nations. So I don't know, maybe looking more into this at better models. So anyway, so they aimed to induce a military coup, and that's actually not wrong. And so yeah, because when you do that, when you put sanctions on people, and then your government doesn't have the money that it needs in order to run or manage your country, obviously there is civil unrest. The consequence: the coup failed, but the Venezuela economy collapsed further. The gold remains in London, generating fees for the custodians, where the Venezuelan people suffered a liquidity crisis that halted food and medicine imports. See, even that, like, there are, it depends on who you're talking to, because I do, based on the research I've looked into as well, like China, well, Iran too, but China was providing like medical and food support, at least medical. And again, there's a reason for that. It's a grift where they wanted their oil, they wanted the access to be that close to the U.S. The ultimate goal of the Carney-Goldman nexus in Venezuela is not democracy, it's privatization. Anyway, it's more than oil. Okay, so I want to get out of Venezuela because, again, it's not just about, there's so much more than just oil and drugs going on with that. It's a consolidation of power and control over so many different networks. Yeah, so when the regime eventually falls, transitions, the country will need a rescue package. And we're seeing that with Gaza as well, where they were even talking about the rescue package or the plan, the building plan, like even before October 7th. Jared Kushner on the record saying that. Well, he's not on the record saying that. He was there when whoever it was that was with him said it, and he was very uncomfortable with that. So I have to correct myself on that. Didn't come from his mouth, but he was there in the room. It might have been like a 60 Minutes interview or something like that. I don't know. But where it was mentioned, and again, he looked very uncomfortable. Okay, so the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and private bondholders, often represented by firms connected to the Goldman Network, will demand the privatization of PDVSA, State Oil, and Corpolec, the power grid, as a condition for aid. The Brookfield angle. Brookfield specializes in buying distressed infrastructure in Latin America. They already own massive assets in Brazil and Colombia. A post-Maduro Venezuela is a shopping mall for Carney's firm and would likely bid to modernize Venezuela's hydro grid using green finance loans that trap the nation in perpetual debt. The China syndrome, funding the adversary. While Carney presents himself as a champion of Western values, his financial strategies have heavily favored the Chinese Communist Party. Brookfield's exposure. Brookfield is one of the largest Western owners of real estate and infrastructure in China. The conflict. While Western governments talk about decoupling from China, Carney's firm is doubling down. They rely on the CCP's goodwill to maintain their multi-billion-dollar portfolio of Shanghai office towers and renewable energy projects. The net zero issue, they're saying Trojan horse, a little dramatic, but anyways, Carney's primary policy push, net zero, is functionally a massive subsidy for China. Supply chain dominance. China controls 80% of the solar supply chain and 70% of the EV battery market. The transfer. By forcing Western nations to rapidly abandon cheap oil, gas, which they possess, for solar wind, which they must buy from China more often than not, Carney's policies transfer trillions of dollars of Western wealth directly to Beijing. The strategic asset. In this light, Carney is viewed by critics not as a savior of the planet, but as a useful idiot or willing collaborator who is dismantling Western energy security to fuel a Chinese manufacturing boom, from which his firm takes a cut. Yeah, so, and you know, Trump's already talking about us being removed from the Five Eyes community, NATO and stuff like that, and it's seeing us as a security risk, and like, and then we vote in Carney. Like, are we dumb? Like, respectfully speaking, and a lot of people didn't have a lot of information on Carney, and that was by design as well. And I can't even believe they didn't. But again, the mainstream media is so disgusting right now in Canada, and they fucked us, or they assisted with fucking us. Anyways, the family business, the Carney Goldman Nexus, supported by a tight circle of family and alumni who manage the private side of trades. So you've got Brian Carney in there as well. He's not just a fixer, but he's in the financial markets. Yeah, and Merrill Lynch banker as well. Brian, his brother, moved into high-yield credit junk bonds and private debt. The synergy. Mark creates the macro environment, interest rates, ESG rules. Brian operates in the micro environment, buying the debt of companies affected by these rules. Example, if Mark Carney pushes for higher interest rates to fight inflation, distressed companies need a lifeline. Private debt funds, the sector Brian inhabits, step in to lend at 12 to 15% interest, often secured against the company's hard assets. It is a pincer movement on the productive economy. So you got the Goldman Sachs alumni, the Bilderberg crew, etc. Anyway. The revolving door network places people in keynotes. Chrystia Freeland, a close associate of Carney, whose policies in Canada, carbon tax, deficit spending, align perfectly with the green finance roadmap that benefits Brookfield. And now she's some kind of an advisor, financial advisor in Ukraine. She's corrupt. Ukraine's government largely is corrupted. And and so, like, when are we going to start arresting people and charging the right people? That's what is going to diffuse these situations more than anything. Tim Hodgins, former CEO of Goldman Sachs Canada, brought in by Carney as a special advisor. You've got Mark Wiseman, Century Initiative, so many other things. But anyways, the mechanism of exploitation aid as a weapon. Anyways, it gets too dramatic here. Yeah. Rebrands colonialism as philanthropy. The blended finance trap. Carney champions blended finance for the developing world. The pitch. We will use public money, taxes, aid, to de-risk investments so private pension funds can invest in poor countries. The reality. The taxpayer takes the first loss. If the project fails, you pay. The private asset manager, Brookfield Goldman, takes the first profit. The result, it is a subsidy for Wall Street disguised as aid for the global south. For the south, I don't even know why it says global south. That's why. So AI, you really have to pay attention if you're getting work done that they're assisting you with. That it's not always going to make sense. And that's why this hasn't been posted yet online. Like I have to look through this more. I don't know which version I'm going to go with and edit. Okay, let me see if there's anything else important here that I haven't already mentioned. Okay. Yeah. Carney's history through the lens of regulatory capture, capital concentration, and post-national governance alignments. So that's the one I had already talked about. Okay. So I think, I don't even know if I'm still rolling here, if people can hear me or not. But I think for today, for major updates and news, and again, just opinions on things. And again, just because I don't agree with people on everything does not mean I hate people. I literally love, and you can't agree with everyone on everything. It's just impossible. And that would be so boring anyways. But there are huge things that I consider to be true that other people don't consider to be true. And it's fine because I love these people. We have good relationships. Again, there's people in my family that vote for multiple different political parties, and we don't allow that to divide us, nor do I allow it to again divide me and my relationships. I have not been the one that has been cutting off or blocking relationships. Like I have lost a lot of friends and colleagues, etc., throughout being more open and vocal about what I think is going on in the world. Especially since COVID, and again, that's where I've lost a lot. It's people that are again, they're not accepting my interpretations of reality, and so much so that they don't even want me in there, which is fine. And so I just hope that people are less intolerant this year, and so you'll be surprised how many rational conversations you can have with people, and don't have to push anything. You could just plant a little seed, or just give 1 point, yeah, and then just leave things. Don't let things escalate within your own, because again, that's so stressful, and there's already enough freaking chaos in the world. We don't need it in our own lives. And so on that note, I will leave it at that, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.